Good afternoon and welcome to the Sip Hour Power Lunch, your midweek go-to conversation about all things Black women. Your Sip host, well, it's a Judith Brown, Dianis, and Glenda Carr takeover today.
Yeah, buddy. We're gonna have some fun up in this camp. We're gonna cuss. No, we're not. Because we got the ministers on it.
It's a faith week. So Judith Brown Diana's from the Advancement Project. I'm Glenda Carr from Higher Heights. Ironically, the two of us are technically on vacation. Fatima Goss-Grays from the National Women's Law Center will be joining us. And Tracy Sturdivant from the League and Adrian Shropshire from Black Pack are off today. So tell us where you're watching from and invite your crew to at least have a late lunch or a coffee with us. And tell us if you want to struggle bus this week, because this is we have put together a great hour, but to say we are on the struggle bus to get here, we have definitely hit the pandemic wall. We are a year into the SIP. For those who joined our birthday party this past Sunday, we celebrated a year of us convening Black women. And we convened it around, obviously gathering Black women around COVID-19. And if y'all recall, last year this time, we were all trying to reimagine what Easter would look like during the pandemic. So today we are reconvening a conversation on reimagining of faith, 365 days of us leaning into our faith, and for our Black churches across this country and religious institutions, how they continue to innovate during this time. So y'all, we are also joined by, she's always considered herself a SIP contributor. We've never been able to actually get her on, but we finally have gotten our girl, Karen Boykin Towns, who wears many hats, and we're going to talk to her later. She's a vice chair of the NAACP board of directors. She was the chair of the Image Award, but today she is a SIP contributor. So thank you, Karen.
Welcome. And Fatima's here.
Oh, I'm back.
Fatima, we were already like, we're taking over the show. So you guys, we are in, for some spring break, it's Holy Week for us. And we're reimagining what, Easter will look like this year for the first time. So what are your thoughts?
We are still experiencing.
Well, I'm excited. My Jack is coming home. My daughter's coming home. It's her first time coming home since she left for college. So she left in September. And so she'll be here just Friday through Monday. So she said, hey, can we go get mother-daughter massages? So we're going to do that.
Well, I'm all out.
I know you freaking out, girl, but they're going to have
I was happy yet, but yeah.
They're going to have the PPP on, and we're going to get the massages on. And we'll be doing virtual church. And Dr. Brock would be happy to know that my virtual church is Alfred Street Baptist Church. So looking forward to doing that. So, hey, Fatima, what are you doing?
Well, I have to say, I usually have, what we usually do is go to church and then we have an Easter brunch at my house. I'm sort of the gathering place. Last year when we didn't do it, I was like, well, for sure next year. And we even talked in those terms that next year we would be having a big brunch at my house. I'm not doing that, obviously. I actually will just say I'm barely back in my house. So I really will not be doing that. But I am reflecting on the year with my family. We had a lot of losses early on, and so they're hitting right now. And there's a lot of sort of gratitude and desire to be together. So we are likely to do some virtual gatherings, which we've gotten better at virtual gathering in this pandemic. I will say at the start, it was a little bit bumpy.
I hope that we continue these virtual gatherings, right? Because we can't be with each other all the time. Like on the other side of the pandemic, that we continue to do that.
That's right.
Yeah. So Karen, what do y'all have planned for the week other than you catching up on sleep?
So Friday, of course, I'm here in Brooklyn, New York, and on Friday is the 7 Last Words. And so my girls, Reverend Dr. Brock, and Reverend Shavon Arline-Bradley are on the schedule for that. So I will be tuning in for that. This weekend, I think we're going to try and have it be a bit low key, in the sense that we were on the West Coast for about a week. So unpacking these bags, that's one thing. And Sunday, of course, we'll be tuning into our virtual church, Antioch Baptist Church here in Brooklyn. Although, we have both been fully vaccinated, my husband and I, so we are blessed about that. And I think they've opened our church up a bit. So the question is, we'll go in for church. But I've really gotten used to this virtual church, and I can go to churches, all across the country in place. So, but definitely grateful to still be here, because there has been so much loss, and I think we all thought by the summer of last year we would be in a different place, and here we are a year later.
Yeah, because I travel so often, I was doing virtual church before, like it was the thing. It was my ability to have, regardless of where I was in the country, some consistency. But these churches have shown out over the year of how I'm like, this is some good church online. They've been, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. But I am, like I said, took some time off this week to do some self-reflection, but also like, was it Glenda Fix Your Life? And so I was on the deck today, like trying to get all of the pine needles off the deck. So I'm fixing my life. But I'm going to be able to. Last year, I was able to go to multiple churches for Resurrection Sunday, and was actually going to church. We virtually went to church, my whole family together, and so that was really good. And last year, we did a little Easter hat. You remember that? We did a little Easter hat edition. And so I might throw on, my family, we actually got dressed up and took pictures. So I might throw a little fascinator on and still take a little picture.
Good.
Oh, I love a good fascinator. I feel like the SIP has also expanded my fascinator abilities and reach. We've all named that this has been a trying and confusing and uncertain year. And one of the things that's helped us get through this time is our faith. And while we review the last year, it only seems right to have one of the contributors join us to give us an inspiration moment. And that is Reverend Shavon Arline-Bradley, who's the Associate Minister at Alfred Street Baptist Church and the founding principal of R.E.A.C.H Beyond Solutions, LLC. So let's take a look at her inspiring message.
The remnants of one of the most unprecedented pandemics in the history of our country and in this world. And as someone who's in public health, but also a preacher, one of the things that I can encourage Black women in this season is that you are absolutely not alone. This is the time where most of us get together. You grew up like I did. Easter was the time we went to grandmama's house. We went to church. We dressed up. We got together. We came home. We ate. We even had dinner just as big as Thanksgiving. But I will say this, that weeping endures for a night, but joy will absolutely come in the morning. And what is the morning? The morning is Black women still engaging with each other. Black women still getting on Zoom calls. Black women staying on the SIP and being able to engage and hear from others. And let me just say this, that God absolutely hears you. I don't want sisters to be discouraged in this moment. Every day is a day that we get closer to coming on the other side of this. But what God always teaches us is that you can't know you've been kept through something unless you've been through something. And so God will continue to keep you. God will continue to speak to you. And in these moments when you do have some quiet, sometimes silence is deafening for our spirits. But let me say this, use your silence to make noise with your gifts. Make noise with your gifts, sisters. Start doing the things you love to do. Start figuring out your plans for your new business. Start designing your new dress or your new outfit. Start thinking about the partnerships you want to create. Get yourself ready to run for office. Hello, somebody. Start thinking about your health and your wellness. Get yourselves and your minds and your hearts and your bodies to a place that you know God can use this vessel to do great things. You are a Black woman. You are our answer to many of the problems that we see in our community. And without your gift, without knowing what you have to instill and impart in others, we are missing out on your greatness. So in this moment, sisters, Yes, it may sound quiet. It may feel like the noise of the silence is wearing on your heart, but use the silence to get to your place of destiny. Listen, you are exactly what this country needs. You are exactly what your community needs, what your sorority needs, what your church or your mosque or your place of worship needs. You are who your family needs, wherever you are. I know that Black women get pulled in so many different directions, but know this. Your ability to do different things is because of how sassy and classy you are. So sisters, be encouraged. God is absolutely working out something for your good. God works out things for the good for those of them that love God and are called according to God's purpose. You've been called, you've been assigned. You are a Black woman. It is your destiny to do great things. So we love you from the bottom of our hearts, and know this too shall pass, sisters.
Well, yes, with the mini power hour word. Thank you, Reverend Shavon, for that inspiring words, because, you know, we classy. I'm sassy. I'm going to add that in. So Pew Research Center surveyed, they conducted a survey this summer, the summer of 2020, that revealed that 3 in 10 Americans, that's about 28% of Americans, reported stronger personal faith because of the pandemic. And they shared the same thought that regardless of religion around America, that we were stronger together in our faith. So here to talk about 365 Days of Faith and Beyond is co-pastor of Fountain of Praise in Houston, Texas, author and motivational speaker, Mia K. Wright, and one of the SIP regulars, Roslyn Brock, the associate minister at Alfred Street Church. She is a nationally recognized health policy advocate, social justice change agent, and noted public speaker. So thank you all for joining us for the conversation this afternoon. And actually say reconvening the conversation, because you were here last year when I think we were all going, so how we doing church, y'all? The two things I think Black women were like, how we doing hair during the pandemic, and how we doing church, y'all? And so it's certainly been a year with innovation. I've visited both of y'all's churches, and I think you've done some amazing things. I mean, your teams have thought beyond the margins of the possibilities that exist to gather saints across this country virtually. But it's also been a trying times for your congregation. So I would love for you all to reflect about what your feeling was 365 days ago around how you were going to reimagine your congregations and your personal faith, and where do you see yourself today? I'll start with Pastor Mia.
Thank you, Glenda. Thanks for having me on here. It's good to see you and all of the sisters that I saw a year ago. And it looks like everybody's doing well. So I'm excited to see that. I think in this season, we are thriving. And really, truly grateful to God for these opportunities to really show the world what God can do. You said something earlier about Black women trying to figure out how we're going to do this, because we are pragmatic. We know how to make it happen, right? It's like, hey, no pandemic is going to stop me. And we feel the same way in the church, of course. We have been streaming online since 2007. So for many years already offering online viewership to people who could not be in the sanctuary. And so what we've seen over the years was that people from all around the world, and people, even members who just were either vacationing or decided they didn't want to come that morning, would still be able to connect and hear the word and sense God's presence. And I think really that's one of the biggest things, is really helping people right now as this pandemic has lasted longer than what I initially thought. I was like, oh, by September we'll be done. And then, a whole year we're still here. But soon we're coming out of this soon, I believe. But I'm going to take these off. It looks like my eyes are really dark. But I just want to say that, this gave us an opportunity to say, How are we serving God? What is the message? How are people receiving the message of God through technology, right? And I think back to like radio broadcasts back in the 40s and the 50s when people got on the radio to talk about Christ and preach sermons. People were like, oh my God, hearing the word expanded and they have to be in the building. And then television ministry came forth in the 60s and 70s and people are like, oh my God, I can learn about Christ on TV. Well, guess what? You can learn about Christ on your smart device, on your iPad, wherever you are. If you're on your way somewhere or out of the country, you can still learn about God. So teaching people about the transcendent nature of Christ and that, you know, God is not limited to four walls and a box. That's the biggest thing. And helping people to understand that we can connect to Christ through our fellowship with one another. We can still communicate online. We can still, you know, chat in the text box, or if we have an offline group, we still have ways and manners in which we can build fellowship and still stay in contact with each other, because church is not just what is worship. It's not just what we put out on Sunday, but it's how we connect with each other Monday through Sunday, right? So how we build our friendships and our fellowships and how we help each other to grow. So I think just the bottom line is that this has given us the opportunity to say, how is God going to expand his message and send it out to the rest of the world? It is upon every church, every ministry, every organization that is in the name of Jesus to expand this gospel. And this is how we can do it. And so I'm excited about it because I'm a techie person. And I love, who was that? Somebody said, I think Karen, was it you or Judith? Somebody said that, you know, they've been to all the churches on last Easter and they really like, I think Karen, you said you like being in virtual church, or you're going to virtual church for Easter. All of that is wonderful as long as you're connecting, you know. So if you're not physically in the building, connect, stay connected no matter where you are. And that's the goal of Christ, is that church is not a building, and church has never been a building, but we somehow started boxing God into a building. But church has never been a building. It's who we are, and it's how we spread the message of Jesus Christ outside of those boxes.
Well, good afternoon, sisters. It's a blessing to be with all of you. I have to agree with what has already been said. You know, I'm privileged to be an associate minister at the historic Alfred Street Baptist Church, where my pastor is the Reverend Dr. Howard John Wesley. And in this 365 days after this pandemic began, we really found out how quickly a year passes. Wow, you wake up, it has been literally over a year since the pandemic hit. But at our church, we've been privileged with our dynamic media ministry, and under leadership of our pastor, we have elevated our game. We've leveled up. If you were to see the dynamism that's happening at Alfred Street Baptist Church, and many churches across the country have used this opportunity to be creative and entrepreneurial from week to week, because you really have to keep the bread fresh if you want the eyeball coming to your services every Sunday. And even our pastor has led us to tithe the tithe, because we know that the real work of ministry is not inside the four walls of the church. It really happens outside the walls of the church, in the community. And it requires us to manifest the gospel of the good news of Jesus in our daily walk and in our prayer life every day to everybody that we meet. I will have to say, however, as a public health expert and a health policy wonk, I advise the pastors, priests, and popes, please adhere to the CDC guidelines until we're able to get herd immunity, that we know there's the pull of us to be together again in fellowship one with another. We want to be in the number one more time. But as summer is coming, and as it's getting warmer outside, I am certain that congregations are going to be very creative in how we are able to socially distance and be able to touch and agree one with another, so that we truly can continue to grow deeper in fellowship with one another.
You know, I want to pick up exactly where you were, because on the one hand, I think about this last year, and churches have had to hold so much of the loss and the illness that, especially in the Black community, that we were grappling with. And And also at the same time, we have the light of the vaccine before us. And one of the stories that is finally breaking through is it's not just whether or not people trust they're going to be able to get the vaccine, it's being able to access it all together. And I feel like the church probably has a huge role to play. Can you guys talk a little bit about ideas that you have to actually make sure that the Black community in particular has access so that people can gather safely at some point?
You know, we've talked about getting together, but real talk, sisters, when we go back into the church, into the sanctuary, it will be different.
Yeah.
Because the mothers, the fathers, the deacons, and those with whom we are used to seeing, many of them have transitioned unexpectedly in this process. So be careful what you ask for, because that's going to be an emotional roller coaster of emotions for seeing howdy, but then the pain of loss of those who are not there anymore. And so that the church has to, in a real sense, be that balm in Gilead, to be the ones who are reaching out to communities, to educating individuals, seniors and communities and vulnerable places about the importance of getting the vaccine. Everybody is talking about the Tuskegee Project, the experiment. Yeah, it happened, but that was a long time ago. I'm vaccinated to both vaccines at this time, Pfizer, yay, done. But I thank God for the opportunity to be a leader, to walk the talk and be serious about health. Because God said that I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. And that means that you've got to take care of this temple, the temple that he gave you in your body. And so if you don't do it for yourself, do it for me, do it for the little ones, and do it for a big mama and them when you're going out. And so do everything you can. Sisters, stay on the wall and communicating, because when and where we enter, we bring the entire community, our knowledge, our love, and our liberty with us.
No, I have to just co-sign with everything Roslyn has said. Our church will be open next week. We have been open on 3 occasions. So during the George Floyd funeral, we were open. In the month of October, before our numbers started to rise again, we were open. And then for Easter and moving forward at this time, we are open. However, we are really, really constrained to CDC guidelines. And I say, if you want anybody on your staff that's like germaphobe, we are the team germaphobe here. And so, you know, we have so many protocols that are in place, but we're looking forward to having 50% of our congregation filled during the Easter service. And with that, and even moving forward, there are still a lot of things that people need to do. We are both, my husband and I, fully vaccinated as well, and we're advocates for the vaccine. We have done several town halls to help encourage people to get the proper information and not just rely on what knowledge they have of the past, but to get the proper information, debunk all those myths that are floating around, particularly in our community, and help people to embrace the science moving forward. We live in Houston, Texas, one of the largest medical communities in the nation, actually in the world. And we both have signed on to be advocates with some of these hospitals to help leverage the platform that God has blessed us to have, to help people understand why this is important and why we do want to get the vaccine. And we understand there are some circumstances that people might not get it. But however, don't be ignorant about it. You know, the Bible tells us don't be ignorant of the devil's devices. Don't be ignorant of man's ways either, but we need to be very informed. We're knowledgeable because God has given us intellect. He's given us the ability to understand. And so when we're teaching one another these things, we're also walking the talk. So we've gotten the vaccine and we're encouraging others to get it as well.
So I just love y'all. That's number one. You're just giving a lot of us life. And I'm watching our Facebook and people are like, yes. So I've been watching the Derek Chauvin trial over the past, this is day 3. And I'm looking at these witnesses with all the trauma that they are carrying. And our community carrying incredible trauma from watching that, from Breonna Taylor and many others killed at the hands of the police. So talk some about the role of the church in this moment because we know, number one, we had a lot of pain around the pandemic. Then we had a lot of pain around state violence, that we may see officers walk away with no accountability whatsoever, as usual. So what is the role of the church right now in making sure that our family, that our community feels whole and protected in this moment?
No, I think one of the biggest things is really embracing the scripture that teaches us that we don't put our trust in chariots, we don't put our trust in horses, we don't put our trust in men, but we put our faith in God. And understanding that there are times in our lives that we cannot understand. The Bible says the secret things of God belong to God. There's some things that we will not understand, but what we do embrace is the peace of God. And what he gives us is the peace of God that surpasses all understanding to guard our hearts and our minds. And so, yes, we may not see the justice, but we pray that God does indeed give justice. We may not see justice in the manner that we expect to see justice. Let me clarify that. In the way that we expect to see justice, but we don't know what God does on the other side, what God does on the side that we can't see, that is justice in God's eyes. And so we learn to embrace that. But I think the whole, the pandemic has really caused a lot of people so much mental and emotional and spiritual stress that we also want to ensure that the church is there supporting people and helping people and teaching others to be kind to people, especially during this process of overcoming, because there are a lot of people really suffering right now. And there are a lot of people really going through, and their emotions are all over the place. It's not time for the church to turn its head and say, oh, we'll let another organization handle this. But the church has to address it. The church has to speak to it. And the church has to help people to understand what we're going through, or help people to articulate their pain, and then help them to seek for reconciliation or healing and be that place that provides healing for others.
Well, as many of you know, I'm a student of the civil rights movement and have spent more than 30 years of my life in social justice advocacy with the NAACP. And I just believe that the Black church, our North Star, has to reclaim its prophetic voice and get back out in the street to issue the clarion call about the social injustices that we find in our communities. When we think about Jesus, he was a man and his ministry was for those who were disinherited and those who were on the fringes of society. And it was a liberating theology. And I'm so glad that the God I serve, and I know that the God that has kept us and brought us this far by faith, is the God who is on the side of those who are lost, least, languishing, and lonely, lamed, and left out. And that's our community and how we feel right now in this pandemic moment. But I think we've got pregnant possibilities with the Black church. We have to, in this real seminal moment, be willing and courageous to stand up and be counted. Y'all all know my word, courage must not skip this generation. And it's time now for Black clergy to stand up and be counted. We've talked about the creativity of our entrepreneurship in this pandemic moment. We've got to do something and touch the real man and woman on the streets. And I say this, from the pit to the palace, from the street to the sweeps, and from the corner to the cross, we have a role and a responsibility to be our brother and our sister's keeper. And it's past time that we need more pastors, preachers, and prophets to stand up and be counted and join hands and move out and do what Jesus talked about.
Well, let me just say, I'm glad it finally came out. Besides being Reverend Doctor, she's also Chairman Emeritus of the NAACP, and she has been on the board for, over 30 years. And yes, she's only 35, but they start them young, you know. But you women are so incredible. But I think the last question I have is, what message can you provide to our viewers who may be struggling with not having community during this Holy Week?
I think I think just really the truth is that, as I said earlier, that God's power is transcendent, and we are to connect. The cross gives us this visible example of a vertical relationship as well as a horizontal relationship. And so our vertical relationship can't be just by itself, that, you know, we don't understand that the horizontal is that we are to connect with others, but find ways to connect. in the same manner that people are able to get their hair done, or people are able to do their jobs, or to view such amazing broadcasts such as this one and others, they can connect with others. So leverage what God has given us, which is the technology. Reach out to others. If you feel lonely or alone, reach out to somebody, because there may be somebody else that's feeling the exact same thing that is waiting for somebody to call them. So you don't have to just, text somebody, call them, go on the internet, just talk to others and reach out and create a space that is safe for you to be able to share. And so that's my encouragement, is be that friend that needs to connect to another.
Amen. And, for those who are in Christendom, we understand that today is Spy Wednesday in this Passion Week. And it was the day that Judas Iscariot betrayed Jesus. And I know many folks in our community feel betrayed by healthcare institutions, government, police officers, and even some of our family and friends. They may feel betrayed in this moment. But I'm here to testify and declare that no matter what comes and no matter what goes, God said that I'll be with you always. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And that's good news today. And that's what I want to leave as a word of comfort to those who may be struggling in this pandemic moment. That God is your healer, he's your peace, he's your way maker, he's your will in the middle of the way. And with God, all things are possible. And I believe that God is able to do all things well.
Amen.
Amen. I jumped on this because I needed those words. And so thank you so much to Reverend Roslyn Brock and Pastor Mia Wright. Just so y'all know, I will be in the Internet Church Streets on Friday for the 7 last words, because the 7 last words that Roslyn Brock will be doing with Reverend Shavon Bradley is with 7 Black women doing 7 Black words. 7 words. Yes, last words. And I will be in church virtually with both my brothers at the Fountain of Praise in Houston with Pastor Mia Wright and Remus Wright.
And I will be at Alfred Street.
So tell us in the comments what your plans are for this Holy Week. And so I'm dropping y'all, but Judith, Karen, and Fatima will be holding it down for the second half. And I'm so mad because we got Chef Amber about to cook up something for y'all. Take care.
Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us, and Glenda, have a great holiday. So we're going to carry on, Fatima, Karen, and Judith. And so we're going to start, we wanted to talk to you, Karen, about the NAACP Image Awards. That was on this weekend, and it was a great show. If anybody hasn't seen it, I'm sure you can catch it online. And Karen, first, you're vice chair of the board. You play a big role in this Image Awards, and it was done very well under crazy circumstances. And so tell us, the pivots that you all had to make to pull off this incredible Image Awards in the midst of a pandemic. What were the things that you did differently? And do you think some of those things you'll keep?
So I am still probably on a bit of a high from the awards show, which showed on Saturday on BET, as well as 12 of the Viacom properties, as well as CBS. For the first time, it was live on CBS, and that was really, really great. And I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the Image Awards Committee. And so we have a committee of about 20-something people that are part of it. And I think it's really important that I let everyone know that the Image Awards is more than just the show you see on TV. The Image Awards for this year was a week long. And if you go to NAACPimageawards.net, that's NAACPimageawards.net, you can see the highlights. We had 5 nights of awards, with the 6th night being the live show. But remember, there's only about 7 competitive categories that are on the live show, but we give over 60 awards. So when you go in to vote, you see you have all of those. Well, those awards are generally given out pre-COVID on at a beautiful Friday night dinner the evening before the live show. But this time we had to figure out, because no one's going to sit on, a Zoom for 4 hours or something like that. So the team that is led by Robin Harrison, she, they did such an amazing job. But I don't know if you've read it yet, but I'm really proud of these numbers. So I just want to share that our overnight rating numbers came back really, really great. So we are the only award show that continues to trend upwards in our audience. So we were up 72%. Viewership was up 72% over last year. The year before, it was up 488%. That was when we left TV One and went to BET. But this year, you saw what happened with the Golden Globes. We were up 72%. So we were thrilled. We were the number one socially shared show of the entire year thus far. So that is huge for us. And it was just pretty incredible. I think we were trending number 2 at our height on Twitter on Saturday. So
now, but I understand. So the show, like I've been to the show when pre-pandemic,
right,
and got all blitzed up and all that. I was all excited, right? But now this time, from what I understand, there was a small physical audience, but you all did something different with that too. And you had these like beautiful outtakes of people at historical sites.
Yeah.
A nice touch.
Yeah. So the producers of the show are some of the, they do the Oscars, the Grammys. Reggie Hudlin is a name you might know, Phil Duran, Byron Phillips. So when we had our first meeting, it was just like, how do we have a show that really reflects upon the year that we've gone through while also being entertained? And so, we struggled with that a bit and really was batting around ideas. But the thought was, let's go to around the country to historic landmarks. And believe me, that too is an issue because we're doing this during COVID, right? And so the COVID protocols are out of this world, but they're really important. And so, yes, we were in New York, we were in Atlanta, we were in LA. And we thought that to have presenters who had connections to these places to kind of like give a little historical piece about the landmark and then sort of share, then kind of name the nominees. And that the feedback has been that worked really, really well. So yes, Anthony Anderson was in a COVID safe studio in LA without an audience. But what we did do was we had for the first ever, of course, a drive-in viewing event in LA. And so there was this huge screen and whatnot. And it was like the parking lot of where the LA Coliseum is. And I think the max we could have was 50 cars. And so we had 50 cars. We had food trucks from some of, incredible eaters. And we had runners who would, you had a menu and then they would bring it to your car. So we, we did the whole COVID safe protocols as well, and had, community in that sort of way, which was outside and whatnot.
Do you think it will go back to what it was, or do you think will it be different?
No, so we will look to go back to have everyone in an auditorium, but I think there are elements that will remain.
I got to start working out now. No.
Get your dress.
I know. So yes, so we plan to go back into an auditorium, but there were aspects of it, like we had the virtual experience. And so if they go to, imageawards.net, There's a place where we had conversations, and, you know, it expands your reach in amazing sort of ways. So in an auditorium, you may have 2,500 people or whatever. Definitely you have the live show aspect, but just being able to, like a digital book. For the first time, we had our program digital book. It is beautiful. You can find it in the virtual experience. And usually the only people who ever get that digital book are the people that are in the auditorium. Well, now it's for everyone. And so tens of thousands of people who have already seen it. And so there will definitely be aspects of the show that we keep. And I think this time has really had all of us like level up, as Chairman Emeritus Brock said, and really find ways to do things even better than they had been before.
So can we shift a little bit and talk about the work NAACP has been doing this last year? Because if you think about the pandemic, the infection rates were extraordinary in the Black community. Access to testing was a struggle in the Black community. The unemployment rate for Black women was going up, even as it was going down for everyone else. And now we have this conversation around equitable access to vaccines. And it seems like the NAACP's role is so very important right now. Can you talk a little bit about the work you guys are doing around the pandemic response?
Well, I mean, it's just been, it's everything has been heightened, right? And so in the last week, in the last 7 days, we have filed 2 lawsuits. So there's been the lawsuit, of course, around Senate Bill 202 that Governor Kemp signed in Georgia, which is just, it's unbelievable. And we all know just the amazing work that Black people did in the November elections, but definitely with the runoffs. And to have a bill that in essence would impact our ability to have voter turnout by requiring photo IDs and mail-in and photo IDs for mail-in balloting, banning drop boxes, saying that you can't provide food as people stand on lines, you know, eliminating souls to the polls, which is something that we know within the Black community. We do that through our churches. So we filed a lawsuit with our partners and allies against that bill. And then I think it was just yesterday, our North Carolina team filed a lawsuit suing the state of North Carolina for Confederate monuments in, I think it's Alameda County, which is about 55 miles northwest of Raleigh. And so, you know, besides lawsuits, which is a big deal, vaccine hesitancy is an issue that we have been very much involved in and have had a few teletown hall meetings where we have had upwards of 60,000 people come on to get information, because we've had, you know, Dr. Kizzy Corbett and other leading scientists and experts to really give us not fake news, but the real news of the information that we need. When we were dealing with the whole PPE situation, and we were finding that our Black businesses weren't able to access the funds that the government, we, you know, partnered with other organizations and, you know, helped them have access to the banks so that they could draw down the money to help keep their businesses afloat. But police accountability, you know, the issues that we see happening around the country, there are no shortage of issues. And at the end of the day, no one organization is able to do it alone. And that is why we are thrilled with the partners that we have that are also, you know, working really hard in this space. Because if one organization could do it, we wouldn't have these issues anymore, right? And we are stronger together. And partnership is really the name of the game in terms of having impact and addressing the issues that plague our community.
Great. Well, you're staying, so we're just going to segue our conversation into talking about hot topics. So there are a lot of things going on in the world. And so let's start with actually with the Shavon trial. We're in day 3 of the trial of Derek Chauvin, the officer who killed or took the lead in killing George Floyd in Minneapolis. Day 3, we're in the prosecution's case. We have seen witnesses come on to talk about their eyewitnesses to the killing. We had a 10-year-old girl, little Black girl, who
Her little boy.
We had a 17-year-old girl who's now 18, who is the one who took the video. Brave young sister who took the video. One of the things that has struck me about this is the trauma that the eyewitnesses are carrying and the guilt that they are carrying. To hear the young sister who videotaped the whole incident talk about the fact that at night she sometimes thinks about and is sorry to him, to George Floyd, because she didn't intervene more. Today, there was a young man who was he works the register at the store, who was the one who received the counterfeit bill, and who went to his manager to say, got this counterfeit bill, and he knows that if he doesn't turn it back over, et cetera, he has to pay the $20 out of his money. The manager tells him to go bring George Floyd back in the store. And he and some employees, they come back in the store and it doesn't happen. So then the manager calls the police. To hear this young man, who's a 19-year-old Black man, talk about the fact that he feels guilty because if he had just not accepted the 20 bill in the first place, that none of this would have happened. To think that people who observed and people who were witnesses to this are carrying the guilt that Derek Chauvin should be carrying, the man who killed somebody and kept his sunglasses on top of his head like it wasn't no big deal, is just incredible. And so it is right, and it is. So it is horrible to be seeing this. I think the one thing that I want to say before I want to hear from you, Fatima and Karen, about this, but the one thing that I would say to people is that justice and accountability don't start and end with this trial, because we know too many times cops have gotten off and walked away. Yes. And so the real work, right, is in the work of changing the way that we interact with the police. Because that young girl knows that she can't feel safe around the police. And they were talking, even one witness who said, I had to call the cops on the cops. You can't, I mean, who are you going to be safe with? Fatima, so what are your thoughts about?
I mean, well, so first, the number of people who actually tried to intervene, who called the cops on the cops, who raised a concern. I mean, that and the fact that they are all feeling guilty around what else they could have done is the thing that kept sticking with me. How many people tried to raise a hand and say something is wrong here? But I keep hearing those little voices. These are children. And they will be shaped by this in ways. The rest of their lives. And the fact that so young they couldn't be on camera for the littlest, that tells you something, to just hear this little voice and really articulating in basic terms, right? They weren't using, she wasn't using big, lofty language, right? She was using the language she was taught about how to be a human in the world. Yeah. And what she understood was happening was not that.
Yeah. Let me just say that in full disclosure, I haven't been watching the trial because I am just so triggered by it. But I do watch the news and I get the headlines, I guess, of the accounting. And last night, I teared up listening to the accounts of, the young people and just the guilt, like you said. But I think it's like so important that this is so much bigger because we have got to change policy. We have got to change laws. And so, here in New York, the city council passed a bill that bans qualified immunity. And so we are hopeful that we will see that take course around the country. But remember, in Congress, there's still the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that it needs to get passed. And so this is an opportunity for us to just double down and realize that our voice matters, our votes matter, and we must stay engaged in this process to ensure that policing in our communities are done the right way, where we are respected and not terrorized. And we will get through this trial. But at the end of the day, I pray that he is found guilty, because anything otherwise, because the first day it seemed like George Floyd was on trial versus the officer. But ultimately, we have an opportunity to stay engaged. We must stay engaged and just ensure that policing in our communities is done the right way. It's going to be a long.
You. So I just want to, before we move to our very last segment, I want to just give a shout out to our contributors, past contributors, R.E.A.C.H and Latasha Brown, for the work that they're doing in Georgia. Because one of the things that has shifted since we talked to R.E.A.C.H this past weekend is that Delta Airlines finally said, really, voter suppression law is a problem. So that was because of pressure that our people put on them. And we have Black CEOs who have now stepped up to say that you have to be either for voting rights or you're against it. And they have now spoken also. And we need to understand that this is the work that these incredible people on the ground have been doing. So shout out to our two sister friends who have been along with us for the ride on the SIP. And I'm going to kick it over to Fatima.
Yeah, when I saw that news, I was like, yes, R.E.A.C.H, yes, Latasha. So what a treat as we are all thinking about this Easter Sunday and our usual traditions, to be joined with Chef Amber, who is one of our early guests on the SIP. And I will just tell you, Chef Amber, I am really upset that I'm not having my brunch, but this is bringing me such joy. So glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's been a year.
And I think we're having a little trouble hearing you. I don't know if there's a way to turn it up just a tiny bit.
Yes, let me do that. And then I'll just talk louder.
Yeah, no, that is perfect. How many times have you been on with us?
I don't know, maybe about 3 or 4, I think. I don't honestly remember. And it's so amazing that we're talking because, we're a year out from when we started, and, we're kind of, we're not 100%, but we're getting there. And, that's a good thing, but I can't believe we're at another Easter, already. But since you still can't have your brunch, you can still make a couple sweet treats at home. So one of the things that we're going to do today is a citrus floral bundt cake. It's springtime, nice and light and airy, and it's super easy to do. So we're going to get into that. The first thing I want you guys to do when you make this recipe is go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 and put your rack in the middle. That way you will evenly cook, because sometimes with bundt cakes, they'll be raw in the middle, or they're too hard at the top or the bottom. Make sure your oven is at a good temperature and your rack is in the right place. And then I've already started the process. So I've taken our fat, which is our butter, and our sugar, and I've creamed that for about 3 minutes to get it nice and light and airy. You want to make sure that all of your ingredients are at room temperature. Don't just pull it out and start baking. That's gonna ultimately give you a baking fail. You want it at room temperature because that's gonna create a nice emulsion when you do it. Also, we're gonna do the alternating method. So here I have the cream and the butter and the sugar already going. And I have my eggs. Again, everything is at room temperature. You're gonna put that in there one at a time just so it can get nice and fluffy. Don't just pour it all in there. Again, baking is a science, so take your time with it. You want everything to kind of just be homogeneous and come together. And once we have that in there, I have my dry ingredients already going. I have the baking powder, the baking soda, salt, as well as the flour. And then on the side, before you also get started too, you have your lemon zest in here. You have lime zest as well as orange zest. And I also have the juice of 2 tablespoons of the lemon and 2 tablespoons of the orange in there. And so I did that first so that it could get nice and mushy, because you don't want to be biting into rind. It doesn't taste good. It's kind of bitter. So the liquid will actually begin to start to break it down. I'm going to put that inside of my buttermilk mixture. So we have that going. And I'm just going to do the 3-to-1, right? So I'm going to take my flour mixture, right? So I'm going to do maybe about 1.5 cups at a time. Again, you want to just take your time with it. If you do, you're going to get a nice and fluffy cake. I don't know if you've ever had a dry bundt cake or a dry pound cake. It's not good. It scars you, you know, and it's because people don't take their time or they want to be too fast with it. So I have that going. I'm going to go ahead and put half of my liquid mixture in, right? And let that mix just a little bit more, maybe about 15, 20 seconds. Just till it gets nice and mixed together. The goal here is at every step, make sure everything is incorporated. That's going to ensure a very nice and fluffy bundt cake, nice and buttery, right? So I got that going. I'm going to let that mix just for a little bit. This is one of my favorite recipes, mainly because it's my mom's. And I know we talk about our moms all the time, being really great cooks, and you know, she's starting to pass down her recipes to me. And, you know, do it for my family and for my friends. And this is one of my favorites. As soon as springtime hits, I'm making this cake. I'm adding in, you know, like strawberries, because we're getting into berry season, you know, blueberries. This is an easy mix to kind of convert to that. And also we had one of our producers that wanted this to be a gluten-free option. Well, that's an easy fix. All you're going to do is substitute, instead of regular AP flour, you're going to take your 1-in-1 of gluten-free flour, and that's it. You can also make this recipe vegan. Now, the way you're going to do that, instead of regular butter, you use vegan butter. Instead of the buttermilk, you can use coconut cream, add a little bit of vinegar to that, and let that sit out, and it's going to create its own buttermilk. As far as the binding of the eggs, you can make a flaxseed gel with like a tablespoon of flaxseed and 3 tablespoons of water, which will equal to 1 egg. So it's really, really simple. That's it. Same recipe, just substitute it out. So here's our mixture. See that? You just want to make sure you don't over mix it. So we have our 12 cup bundt cake pan. You can actually use butter and flour to do your pan. That's going to be a very important step. I don't know if you've ever had a cake not come out of a pan because it wasn't buttered or floured properly. Not a good feeling. So make sure when you do it, you're getting in all the crevices. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use my butter flour mixture in a can. It's definitely a lifesaver, right? Easy. Just make sure you get all along the sides, get in all of the crevices. Get everything nice and covered, because you don't want to go through all of this work, right? And then not have your cake come out. You want people to be able to enjoy it, have it still look extremely beautiful. Look at that. It smells so good. I wish you guys could smell it, but you will if you make it at home for your family and for yourself. It's a nice, nice treat. I love it. I love to put berries on top of this too. So we have that. And by magic, I'm going to put it in the oven, right? So once it comes out of the oven, it's very important that you're going to let it lemon juice. Now, mind you, the last step is very subjective. Either you love a lot of frosting or you don't, a lot of glaze or you don't. It's up to you how much you decide to do. So you just start to add in your liquid a little bit at a time until you can actually get the right consistency to go over top of the cake. This is my favorite part. I remember being with my mom while she did this, and I'm sitting here waiting for the frosting to harden just so I can lick it off and eat it. It's so good. And in this, I have some lemon zest as well. The same zest that we put inside the cake, I actually put it inside of this mix. So you're going to get that nice, pungent, tart, and sweet on it, right? And then you're just going to take your time and just drizzle it on there, right? However much you want. If you want to use a little or a lot,
that looks so good. That looks so good, Chef Amber.
Totally up to you.
That looks so good. We're all Fatima's over here saying she's gonna make that cake. So we have to wrap. Chef Amber, we want to thank you. That looks so good. First of all, you said
last step though. So last step to make it floral, you're gonna put these beautiful edible flowers on it.
Oh, cute.
And it's super springtime. These are orchids and I think peonies. And it's
so pretty. Thank you, Chef Amber. That is beautiful. You whipped that up so fast. Thank you so much. So we want to thank everyone for joining us today, for being with us on the SIP Hour. We want to thank our new sitting in co-host Karen Boykin Towns for joining us. And so for Fatima Gasgrave, Judith Brown-Dianis, and our missing co-hosts, Adrian Shropshire, Tracy Sturdivant, and Glenda Carr, we want to see you back at the SIP. Now, remember, we're taking a little spring break. And so that means we will be back on May 7th, but you can tune in to see some of our favorite shows. Will be on repeat on Wednesdays and Sundays, but we will see you with a surprise reboot of the SIP on May 7th, which is Friday. So check us out, and we look forward to seeing you, and have a great holiday. Take care. Bye-bye.